Welcome back to the world of overly long FNAF discussion and analysis. It's time for me to make another video defending a somewhat hated FNAF thing. Though, I admit today's topic is not nearly as hated as much as Security Breach was. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie released last year on October 27th, and I went to go see it in theaters. And personally, I found this to be a really great film with a super interesting story, compelling characters, and great artistic choices. Looking online though, I remember YouTube and social media in general was a little flooded with people ranting about how horrible and bad they thought the movie was. This film has abysmally low scores on review sites, with a 32% on Rotten Tomatoes? Ouch! That's fucking bizarrely low. For reference, Shrek the Third, which is probably the most hated Shrek movie, has a score of 52. Especially on websites like these, all of these scores are kind of ridiculous because the FNAF movie is definitely better than Shrek 3 by a long shot. I think we all can agree there. There is no way that any of these Rotten Tomato movie critic website scores are accurate to any of these movies' qualities, by the way. I love analyzing film and its elements. I got my college degree in arts, and I literally have made a documentary that got put on a PBS series, so I know a thing or two about the art of film, and I can say that I don't trust critic scores at all. It's worth mentioning that this movie isn't as hated on completely as it seems at first. General audiences thought it was pretty good, and also many general FNAF fans also enjoyed it. But I still see enough hate towards the movie to want to make a video giving my own thoughts and opinions on it. The FNAF movie is a great movie, and not just for fans of the series like some people claim. The FNAF movie is also great for newcomers, and it can stand on its own as a unique yet intriguing story. Everything about this film is pretty phenomenal and amazing, and it's chock full of interesting details to chew on, theorize about, or point at and scream in excitement because it's a clever reference. Today we'll be discussing it all. Before we begin, I have to give an obligatory spoiler warning. I'll be talking about every element of this movie, and that includes discussion of major plot points, characters, etc. Please go check out the FNAF movie first if you don't want to be spoiled for it now. Also, I'll be showing clips from the movie, and there might be some light gore or flashing lights, so there's your warning for that too. Also, I think I'm just gonna shut my computer off while I record this video. I know all my notes were on there, but I'm talking about a horror subject today, and I really don't want any unexpected visitors popping out of my screen.
Hi, Sparkle. You left your front door unlocked.
Okay, I shouldn't have jinxed it. Hey Cat, hey Bugged, are y'all here to talk about FNAF again with me?
Of course. I love the FNAF movie. It's so scary.
Okay, what is it, Bugged? Let me guess, you hate the FNAF movie, right?
It is a subpar horror film.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. Well, maybe we can hear each other out while talking about it today. Let's get started. The FNAF movie has had a very rocky history. It's one of those films that was stuck in development for years and years and years. Sometimes when films are stuck in development hell, those films turn out bad because of messy development, but I think for this movie, it was mainly because Scott Cawthon, the creator of FNAF, wanted the movie to be just right. He's very particular about his world and series, so obviously he wants any movie about it to feel like it fits correctly into FNAF with the vibes and lore accuracy. So he was reportedly very picky about it. Definitely the correct choice, because if the FNAF movie was rushed out and subpar, I would likely not be happy with it. The first movie was announced all the way back in 2015, literally just a year after the original FNAF game had just come out. This means it would ultimately be in production for around 8 whole years. This original news announced that the movie would be produced by Virgo Entertainment, with Roy Lee, Seth Grahame-Smith, and David Katzenberg being specific producers. Warner Brothers had the rights to distribute the film, but this team failed to produce a script that was really up to Scott's standards. In 2017, Warner Brothers lost the rights to the film, and it was instead picked up by Blumhouse, who would be the ones to eventually actually release the movie. Blumhouse is a pretty decent choice. They produce so many horror movies. Some are bad, but some are movies that people really like. In 2018, a script was produced by Chris Columbus, who had written for movies like Home Alone and The Gremlins. And also the racist turf movie, but I'll ignore that. But that script was rejected since Scott didn't like it. More information wouldn't really come out until 2021, when Jason Blum wrote about how difficult it had been to find a script that Scott would actually approve of. Blum and Columbus and other people in Hollywood might have produced ideas that they liked, but even though these Hollywood executives had a lot of power, ultimately Scott had the final say in the project. I'm kinda happy. I'm not saying that these writers would have done an outright bad job or anything, but it's good when a movie has the creator's final say in it, and it doesn't bend to the whims of whatever Hollywood bigwigs want. The good news would finally come in 2020. I remember Scott discussing several different scripts and ideas they had considered while writing for the film, including weirder concepts such as featuring the sister location animatronics and such. However, Scott Cawthon finally accepted a script that was a lot closer to the original game, featuring the story of Mike as he accepts a security job for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to support his little sister Abby. It was announced Emma Tammy would be directing the film. It was also revealed that Jim Henson's Creature Workshop would be working with Blumhouse to create the animatronics for the movie, which was possibly the coolest news we could have ever hoped to hear. Eventually, we got more news about the cast, trailers for the movie, and an official release in theaters and on Peacock in October of 2023. It's crazy to me that I was a little kid when the FNAF movie was first announced back in 2015, but I still remember that well, and it took until I was a full grown-ass adult for it to come out. Needless to say, I've waited for this movie for years, so let's finally get into the movie itself. The story in the FNAF movie, on a surface level, follows Mike Schmidt, who has become a night guard for an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. The pizza place has a dark past, unbeknownst to Mike, with incidents involving children going missing at the location and the animatronics being haunted. However, the emotional beats of the film are more focused on Mike's story itself. Sure, he's working at Freddy's, but before the film really shows us any of that, they spend time establishing all of the things he's been going through with his personal life at home. Mike is tormented in his past, which gets explored a lot more later, but he's also got a lot of responsibilities on his plate in the current. He has to provide for his little sister Abby, but is also fighting a custody battle over her with his aunt, who is very evil and rich. She doesn't even really care about Abby, just wanting money from the state to have custody over her. But she's willing to pull really dirty tactics in order to get her hands on her. From pulling out the classic privileged white woman crying during meetups to try and emotionally manipulate those around her, but also by using her wealth to hire people to interfere with Mike's success. I really enjoyed that the movie waits and takes its time before delving into the haunted pizzeria stuff. They could have just rushed into it by starting the movie with Mike working there, but to help support the emotional through line of the movie, they spend time establishing characters you can connect and feel for. It's not just a haunted pizzeria. It's a guy we're actually invested in who's haunted by his past and also his current issues, uncovering the secrets of Freddy's with us. I think that the writing is paced well, and it does a good job of establishing the characters well before delving into the interesting story that's hidden within Freddy's. And that story in Freddy's is just as interesting and really well conveyed. We start to see glimpses of how dangerous the place is and how dangerous the animatronics are, with the opening scene and the other scenes with the animatronics being violent. But it takes Mike a long-ass while to realize what the animatronics are. You know, haunted. Since a lot of this stuff happens when he's really not paying attention. I like that they show it to the audience and foreshadow everything with subtle hints as to what may have happened here. Clues sprinkled around by Vanessa, who is being intentionally vague and cryptic to Mike. The symbolism in Mike's dreams, etc. I will go more into specifics about the story as we move further along in the video, but just as a general rating, the writing here is pretty good. It conveys everything well, and it has a lot of subtle humor that fits well into the vibe of FNAF, which has always had subtle, sarcastic humor to contrast against the disturbing horror elements. But it's also successful at portraying a realistic and emotional story with a lot of cool, subtle details incorporated into it. I also think it's pretty newcomer-friendly. I mean, there might be a few questions someone might have if they jump into the movie without really knowing a lot about the games, but for the most part, the movie establishes all of the characters and storylines well, introducing and explaining all of the necessary concepts to know, like the children going missing or the spring lock's functionality, to the viewers without seeming over-explanatory for those who already know the game's lore. After all, it's a completely different world and universe from the games, so you really don't have to know much about the games at all to get invested. The story stands on its own and it is compelling. I know this for a fact because I watched this movie with several people who knew jack all about FNAF, mostly mine and my friends' parents, but they still ended up getting invested. All of the characters are pretty well developed too. The main focus is of course on Mike and the struggle he has with his past and how it's impacting his present. Mike's life is somewhat revolving around his habit of getting as much sleep as he can, to the point where at the beginning of the movie he's turning down night shifts because he wants to sleep as much as he can at night. When he does give in to working at Freddy's, he constantly ignores Vanessa's warning of not sleeping during work to do just that. It's a desperate obsession he has with trying to uncover and, in a way, change the past. When Mike was around 12, his baby brother Garrett was kidnapped in front of him during a camping trip. Garrett was never seen again, and they never found the guy who did it. I imagine Mike feels responsible for it, since his mother had told him to keep watching for Garrett and he immediately got distracted. So now Mike has become obsessed with dream theory, which of course is a subtle reference to one of the most controversial FNAF fan theories ever proposed, but that theory isn't really relevant to the movie at all, it's just a subtle Easter egg. In the movie, dream theory refers to a theory where all the information a person has ever seen gets stored inside of their brain, and those memories can be unlocked through dreams. Mike has basically been lucid dreaming and forcing his brain to go back to the day that his brother was taken every night, in an attempt to recall the kidnapper's face or any information about him. While logically doing this won't change anything, Mike wants to change his past, so he's doing everything he can to change it. However, this is inadvertently impacting his current life. Mike is focusing too much on the past to the point where he's not really appreciating what he has in the present. This is best illustrated with Abby. Sure, he's fighting to keep custody over her with this family court battle, but throughout the movie he does things that endanger her. Taking her to his work, letting her play unsupervised with the animatronics to the points where she gets hurt in a small accident, all leading up to a moment where, since he thinks it'll change the past, Mike agrees to give up Abby in exchange to be with Garrett and his deceased parents in his dreams again. Abby symbolically represents everything Mike has and loves in the present, while Garrett represents everything Mike's lost in the past. It's such a great idea to parallel these two kids in this way, and it really ties into the movie's greater themes of contrasting a dark past and letting that cloud the present, which can also tie into Vanessa and the dead children's characters, but we'll talk more specifically about them in a little bit. I think Josh Hutcherson does a great job conveying Mike. I know a lot of people think he's a bad actor, but he really isn't. I think everyone's view of him is just tainted since he played Peeta Mellark in the Hunger Games movies. The Hunger Games were a great, amazing book series, don't at me, but the movies definitely missed the mark by not understanding many of the points that the book itself was trying to make, and just being generally disliked since people think it's bad quality and has bad acting. However, all acting is sort of dependent on the director. The director of FNAF worked closely with all the actors so they could deliver the right performance, and in this movie specifically, I think all of the actors do a great job, Mike included. On the special features, Hutcherson talks about his process with Mike and how he really focused on making him grounded and down to earth, and I think that works well for his character. Throughout the movie, he's very reserved, quiet, almost seeming nervous with the way he bounces his leg or thinks before talking. It works great for a character whose story is centered around how he's dealing with trauma. Mike is a very grounded and serious character, and it makes him a great straight man for all the crazy shit going on around him. Okay, I know the term straight man is more used in comedy situations. Can I still apply it to the crazy ghost haunting horror shenanigans going on? No? Fuck it, I'm gonna use it anyway. And Mike's not just some serious sad guy. Mike is sometimes very sweet or a little silly when it comes to his interactions with Abby, and it's just very, very subtle. The giddy smile he gets showing her his badge in an attempt to connect with her and seem like a cool big brother that she would like, the small subtle smiles and fond looks he gives her after tucking her in, tucking strands of hair behind her ear, just generally caring for her. It's very clear that he does love Abby a whole lot, even if there is tension between them, since Abby tends to ignore him, and he does tend to be a serious wet blanket. Abby is a super adorable character, and she does a great job of getting you as the audience invested in her safety. Seriously, I saw this movie both in theaters, but I also showed it to my parents and my friends' parents, and literally every time it got to the scene where Abby sneaks off alone in the dangerous murder restaurant by saying,
"I'll be right back,"
I shit you not, everyone in the audience and all of the parents yelled, "No!" Abby has issues with being very reserved, at the beginning of the film preferring to draw by herself rather than interacting with anybody else. However, she's also just a super cute kid, and you can understand Mike's motivation for why he doesn't want to lose her. She's funny in the way that she often speaks in a super blatant and direct way.
She looks so angry. Why does everyone always look at you that way?
Also, her interactions with the animatronics are flat out adorable. I love how much fun she seems to have with them. I too wish I could hug Freddy Fazbear or dance with Chica. She has a childlike innocence, not really sensing how dangerous they can be at first, and that's important for her to be able to connect with the animatronics. Another character that's written super well is Vanessa. At first she's very, very odd, speaking and acting in a strange cadence. She weirdly seems to know a lot about the restaurant. The first time you watch, you really have no idea what to make of Vanessa's character because she's just very intentionally suspicious. She has her own secret agenda, not one she really wants to carry out, but she's being scared into keeping an eye on this place and Mike because of William Afton. This Vanessa is really very different from the Vanessas in the games, but that is one similarity between them that's very interesting and sad. Vanessa's being manipulated into acting a certain way because of the murderer. She, like Mike, is also haunted by her past. Being the daughter of William Afton, a fucking serial killer who murdered children just like her, and also traumatized her since it's directly implied that he was abusive to Vanessa. Vanessa hates him, but he's also using her fear to control her. She's scared of what will happen if she doesn't listen to him. It's heartbreaking to think about, but it also gives a good explanation for why she acts the way she does. As a side note, I really like Elizabeth Lale's acting as Vanessa and the subtle way she portrays this fear. Especially if you're looking closely at her during the big reveal scene, she fiddles with her sleeves nervously, avoids eye contact with Mike, and does other body language that conveys an agitated demeanor. She also tends to get defensive and upset when Mike starts really poking into what's happening here at the pizza place, which is good for letting us know that she knows more than she's letting on, but is also good for portraying what she's feeling emotionally. At the heart of it all, not wanting Mike to dig too deep because he too could be killed. However, you can still tell that this Vanessa is trying her best to act of her own volition without directly disobeying William. She generally does get to know Mike and even tries to warn him, in her own way, without directly spelling it out since she feels like she can't. She acts as a great source of exposition, but does it in a subtle way, trickling hints to help spell out the story without directly opening her mouth and going, "Kids were murdered here and they possess the robots!" She gives a lot of sound advice and provides a lot of useful story information, which could be especially useful for newcomers to the series since she has such an inside view to Freddy's. She knows about the incidents that took place there, she knows about the animatronics, she knows about the spring locks. She looks out for Mike by helping cover for him by not reporting his fuck-up with the break-in at Freddy's when she sits down and talks to him about Garrett and Dream Theory, and continually checks in on him and helps him medically. She's just supposed to be watching him for William, so Mike doesn't find out too much, but she's doing her best to help him. This is a smaller detail, but I also appreciate how Vanessa is with childlike wonder in the movie. She had her childhood pretty much ripped away from her by her father, and that's apparent by how she acts now as an adult. When she first shows off the animatronics to Mike, she's very excited and genuinely thinks that the animatronic show is something magical, even asking him to dance. She has a good relationship with the animatronics.
Vanessa's here.
Yeah.
My friends talk about her sometimes.
What do they say?
That she's nice.
And also, she seems to be very protective over Abby, showing alarm when Mike first brings her to this dangerous place, rushing to help and comfort her when she gets hurt, threatening to shoot Mike if he brings her here again. She's traumatized since she knows what happened to the other kids that came here, and that fear makes her want to protect Abby no matter what, even sacrificing her own safety, because
I won't let you hurt her too.
easily the scene that encapsulates all of these characters and these ideas the best is the scene where, after Mike has brought Abby back to the restaurant, Abby excitedly proposes the idea of building a giant fort for everyone, including the animatronics, to all fit inside of. Mike, worried about her, basically gives her a soft no, explaining that the animatronics could be dangerous and they need to establish some rules.
Vanessa, what do you think?
I think we could use the tables for the fort.
Everyone, follow me. Come on.
This scene is great because, while yes, Vanessa knows fully well what the animatronics are capable of, She also knows that they're just kids who didn't get to have a childhood, and that they won't hurt Abby. Mike is sort of dumbfounded. Their acting is all great because you can tell a lot through the wordless glances they give each other. Everything's written so clearly on their faces. The awesome song Connection, which we'll touch more on later when we specifically get into the music of the movie, kicks into high gear as we get a fun, silly montage of the animatronics helping to build the fort. This all leads to the shot where they're laying together under the giant table fort. The dead children, Vanessa, Mike, they're all characters who have had their childhoods taken from them because of William's actions, and it's the first time in a long while that they're allowed some sort of aspect of childlike fun.
This scene feels too lighthearted. The animatronics are supposed to be scary. Having multiple scenes where they're cute and cuddly ruins the horror aspect.
I hear a lot of people who don't really know much about FNAF lore spouting that opinion, but I really think they're missing the whole point of the animatronics. Sure, they're scary, but that's not all there is to them. The entire point is that they're just hurt children. It makes sense that they don't actually want to be violent, and they've just begun losing themselves over years and years of abandonment and pain. The animatronics have always been nice to the children, as explained in the FNAF 2 phone calls, and it wouldn't be lore accurate or make sense if they did want to just kill Abby without William's influence. It's more tragic when the kids have lost themselves, and that's why they're violent. At least it's more compelling than just murder robots for the sake of it. There's also something fun about combining horror with whimsy. That's sort of the appeal in FNAF in general. It takes something seemingly cute and kid-friendly and twists it. By contrasting the light and dark tones, it exaggerates those dark themes even further. Another character portrayed really well is William Afton. I have legitimately been told that Matthew Lillard was a bad actor in this movie, and it's shit like that that makes me think people are just reviewing this movie in completely bad faith, since Matthew does a brilliant job of conveying his character. He seems fairly normal at the beginning, if not a little odd, like he's hiding something, but it's not obvious enough for Mike to fully catch on or question it. Especially on the phone, the way he chuckles and smiles to himself gives the audience the impression that he knows way more about what's going on than Mike does. But by the end of the movie, when he comes out in Spring Bonnie, he's fully embracing the role of abusive murderer, his need to have control over everyone around him, his acting and mannerisms. It's all great. In the behind-the-scenes interview, he talks about performing in the suit, and how he really had to focus on using just his body language, the way he walks and moves his head and such, to convey this menacing character. The amusement in the tone of his voice as he taunts Mike, the way he addresses Vanessa and uses intimidation tactics of yelling, choking her, and being generally threatening to get her to do what he wants.
William uses intimidation and fear to get his way, acting violently to get control over everyone around him. I wish I was that scary.
There's a part where he's purely in an automatic violent mode, stabbing Vanessa without even thinking twice about it, which reflects what a horrible monster he's turned into. Since he does it in such a rehearsed way, you know he's done this countless times before. There's a moment after she collapses where you can see the most subtle hint of shock on his face. He's surprised even himself with how far his depravity has come, automatically stabbing his own daughter. But in an instant, he snaps himself out of it, back to his violent self as he has to direct his attention towards trying to stop Abby. His acting is sublime, and I truly think he did a fantastic job of portraying a great horror villain. The final character that we must talk about is, of course, the greatest character in the entire FNAF film, and I think you'll agree he's one of the greatest characters in all of cinema, with sublime, emotional acting that connects with even the most cold-hearted of viewers. Everyone, let's all take a moment to appreciate
Doug.
Doug the lawyer, everyone. Best character of all time. What a lad. One of the coolest parts of this film is the sets. Everything looks so incredibly suited to both the world and the time period. The most obvious is inside of the pizzeria, which not only looks incredibly accurate to how a Chuck E. Cheese or a Showbiz pizza restaurant might be set up, but it looks super accurate to Freddy's itself. The props being real FNAF merchandise, the posters of the characters, the stage being set up exactly as it is in the games, the checkered floor, the multicolored lights that fit the 80s arcade vibe, it's fantastic. One of the coolest spaces has to be the office, purely because of how accurate it is to the FNAF 1 game. A room with several computer monitors set up so the guard can keep diligent watch over the cameras, the doors to the side, the lockers, even the smallest details like the plastic cup, the wadded up ball of paper, the fan, the coffee maker on the back table. A lot of it is subtle references, and it helps to not only build out the environment, but to better fit the same vibe that the games have. The back areas of the restaurant, off limits to the public, feel very fitting, but also almost alien to the bright, colorful presentation of the main attractions. With hallways and backrooms that are dark and sparse, no decorations, it can be creepy, especially when we enter William's animatronic workshop, a mess of wires and parts, many of which were props from old Jim Henson movies, which is a cool detail.
The disarray of animatronic parts crowding every surface. It's like the den of a builder who still lurks behind the scenes. I love the horrific torture device in the middle of the room, set up to drive buzzsaws into a victim's face as they're strapped down against their will.
Yeah, everything in this room certainly has great environmental storytelling. It's not just the rooms in the pizza place that have great sets. Everything outside of Freddy's is very accurate looking to the time period. The film takes place in the year 2000, as indicated by the security camera within the first few minutes of the movie. As such, all of the technology, the phones, Mike's car, etc., it's dated to what sort of devices they would have had access to at the time. The clothes are also suited to the time period, and I don't know where else to say this, but specifically with Abby, I think all of her outfits are so fucking adorable. I would legit wear some of these if they were in adult sizes. Everything seems pretty accurate to the types of styles that were popular in that time period. And speaking of the costume department, let's talk about the animatronics! Now, it might seem odd that I've waited so long to talk about the main guys themselves, but that's mostly just because the film itself really waits until you're in the thick of the story to show them off, and then it waits even longer to confirm that they are indeed haunted and alive, which is great for building the anticipation and excitement. The animatronics are probably the coolest fucking part of the movie, because, as you may know, they are entirely practical effects, being real robots and puppets built in collaboration with the Jim Henson Company. I think a real worry for us FNAF fans had for years before the film came out is them cheaping out and CGIing in the robots. CGI has its place sometimes in film. In fact, sometimes it's used in smaller parts of this movie, like for the Springlock Boar, but a lot of it can look really out of place if it isn't incorporated well into a live-action film. CGI advances over time, so if you look back at an old film with heavy CGI use, you'll probably notice that it looks bad, since you're more used to how modern CGI looks. Practical effects not only tend to hold up over time better, but it's also cool since it's a physical prop that the actors can interact with. The actor's actually able to see and touch them, so they don't have to just pretend that the animatronics are there. Josh Hutcherson discusses in an interview about how he was nervous going into the set for the first time, since the animatronics are puppets and he thought he would be too in his head thinking about how silly it is, but since they're so incredibly well made, it took him aback and freaked him out, which only added to his performance.
All of a sudden, it felt very real to me, and that really caught me off guard, and thank God it did, because that made my job a lot easier.
We wouldn't have had any of these benefits if they were all just CGI'd in. The craftsmanship on these puppets is insane. The proportions, colors, and character designs all perfectly reflect the designs from the games with great accuracy. Half of the puppets in the movie are entirely robotic, but half of them are suits that actors can wear so they can accomplish more complex movements that plain robots couldn't. The only exception is Foxy, who's full robot since his skinny legs and design filled with holes don't really allow room inside of him for an actor. Foxy takes 6 different people to operate. One person on each of his legs, arms, one person controlling his facial movements, one person tilting his body up and down. There are a lot of different components that go into puppet performance, and it's super fascinating and impressive, illustrating just how many people need to come together to make a project like this movie possible. The actors who are inside of the other animatronic suits are also doing an impressive job, being almost blind, having to pilot a very heavy costume with a helmet and tons of electronic components, often having to hold stiff poses for long periods of time. It's a lot of work, and they all manage to convey character and the personalities of the animatronics well through just their movements and body language. I've heard people complain about robots having red eyes that glow and that that's not accurate to what they did in the games, but to be honest, I can't imagine getting that fussed over such a trifling little detail. I think the glowing eyes are cool. They too are practical effects with actual lights being built inside of the robot eyes. All the robots look great and accurate. The fabric choices are great and everything looks appropriately aged. The cupcake looks so good that it kind of looks fake. I know that sounds like a weird backhanded compliment, but there were times I was watching the movie for the first time and I was asking myself, that thing looks way too shiny. Is it CGI? Nope. It just has a really shiny plasticky finish painted on it, which kind of contributes to the fakey, cheesy, cheap restaurant feel, so I like it. Even the sound effects we hear of them walking around and blinking are real. You can audibly hear the metal clinks of their blinks in behind the scenes footage, and it's so cool. Speaking of sound, the next thing I want to talk about is the film's music, both the original pieces composed for it and the already existing songs that were added into the soundtrack. Every song in this movie is used masterfully, and it's really brilliant. The music in the movie was composed by the Newton brothers, and they did a great job of making music that fits into the world of Freddy's. My favorite example is the song that plays during the opening credits, which uses very electronic but also retro-sounding instruments to create such a catchy beat. There are ghostly and ominous vocals, and this is used in quite a few songs. Since it sounds like there's children singing, it gives you the impression that it's the ghosts of the children. I love how these voices swell during the big dramatic reveal scene where Mike is learning everything that happened here. This might be more considered sound effect and less music, but they also use children's screams faintly in the background in a few scenes when they're discussing or recalling the horrors that happened here. It adds a lot and makes the song sound a little creepy and mysterious, perfect for the secrets lurking within Freddy Fazbear's. Most of the other songs are generally creepy and pretty good. I love the discordant violin sounds that play whenever Mike is talking with the ghost kids in his dreams and they attack him. It makes the audience feel super uneasy. It's great. This movie also uses some older songs for the animatronics performances, and I think that each of these songs are used so wonderfully, I can't even put it into words. The first song you'll recognize is Talking in Your Sleep by the Romantics. Not only is this a song that would have been popular in the 80s, but this was also a song that was literally used in Showbiz Pizza during the Rockafire Explosion performances, with Mitzi Mozzarella having her own cover of the song. How cool is that?
You tell me that you love me, and I know that I'm right, 'cause I hear it in the night, yeah. I hear the secrets that you keep when you're talking in your sleep.
So we know that it's super appropriate to use this song in a similar pizza place, but the song itself also fits thematically if you look at the lyrics. The song is literally called Talking in Your Sleep, and the lyrics sing about the secrets that you keep but are revealed when you talk in your sleep. Worth noting that Mike, who spends most of his time trying to sleep, literally talks to the ghost children in his sleep, trying to uncover the secrets of what happened to his brother, and more generally, what happened here at Freddy's. I don't think they could have picked a more fitting song. I also like Connection by Elastica, which didn't release until the mid-90s, but it's still an older, popular alternative song. Go figure, the song about connections plays when the characters are connecting to each other while building a fort. I don't have as much profound shit to say about this one other than the music adds to the fun vibes of the scene. Maybe this is some pretentious bullshit to comment on or whatever, but I don't care. This film has really good cinematography. Maybe not the most artistic thing you've ever seen, but this movie really knows how to frame a shot and which techniques add to different emotions and vibes in different scenes. I really like how there are interesting camera angles when capturing different scenes. Sometimes, instead of just shooting the whole room as like a wide shot, they'll instead focus on small interesting details that are more interesting than just a bland shot. This is random as hell, but a fun example is when Mike is jumping on his bed to try and rip the poster off the ceiling. Instead of getting a shot of him just jumping on the bed, the camera is focused on the floor under his bed, letting us see Abby's feet as she walks in and incredulously asks him what he's doing. I don't know what else to say other than that's just an interesting choice to do that. It kinda grabs my attention more by doing something more interesting. In Mike's house, they often focus the shots in on the characters. Instead of like a wide shot of Abby watching the TV, the camera is low to the ground looking up at her, focusing our attention in on her. This is the correct choice, since she's the emotional focal point, while Mike is in the background really considering why he has to take this job, etc. Something I love about cinema in general is how you can use camera angles to focus your attention on the smaller details of a scene, making the audience feel like they're really there in the room with them. In Freddy's, we often get to see shots focused on small, fun details as well, whether that's on specific decorations or in the office, focusing in on the scene in interesting angles. It's also cool how they focus in on a lot of shapes and silhouette and small details that will only be visible for an instant. It draws your attention in a very cool way and can make watching the film more engaging, as you're on the lookout for details you didn't notice the first time watching. None of that's to say that they don't use wide shots well either. There are several good shots of just big, wide open areas in the pizzeria, and it kind of makes you feel uneasy with how big and empty the place seems. I like how often they'll use super close-up shots to make you uncomfortable. Whether this is getting really up close to the animatronics' faces to highlight the horror of them, this conversation in the diner between Jeff and Aunt Jane where they're discussing something highly illegal and all of the shots make you feel like they're speaking very directly to you, this close-up shot of Vanessa where she's observing the drawings in the pizzeria. I've seen people memeing about this shot and I really hate it because a lot of the times it feels like they're just making fun of the actor's appearance. Having the camera super close and directly on a person's face is supposed to be making you feel deeply uncomfortable and uneasy, since, as humans, we don't hardly ever get this close to someone's face unless it's a tense or intimate moment. Vanessa is recalling the horrors of what happened here, so it really fits the scene. Finally, their use of handheld cam is pretty good. Sometimes in movies and shows, you'll notice that the camera is all shaky, and that's because the camera operator is holding the camera by hand rather than using a tripod. Now, this can be done poorly if you overuse it by using it in a scene that isn't supposed to have any kind of tense atmosphere at all, or if you intentionally shake the camera while filming instead of letting the shakiness stem from the natural way your hands might shake while holding the camera. However, this movie uses the technique well, and I think it's a good example of how using a handheld camera can enhance a scene by making it feel more tense. It's used in hectic or violent scenes, or when the characters are arguing with each other and the emotions are running high. Using it properly in scenes like this brings out all of the feelings well. Finally, let's touch on all the Easter eggs in this film. It is really cool just how chock full of references the FNAF movie is. Now, I know some people argue that this movie is bad because it panders more to fans than to general audiences, making it a bad watch for anyone who's not a FNAF fan already. This argument is just untrue, but we'll address the film criticisms more later. I don't think having plenty of references in an adaptation is a bad thing if you do it correctly, which this movie does. In any adaptation, you should prioritize being mindful to the original source material. Even if you have to make changes so it fits whatever new format you're adapting your story into, you do have to make sure that your adaptation stands on its own so new viewers will understand it, but in my opinion this rule doesn't apply to fun little references hidden in the background. Not everyone has to fully get those. It's just there so fans of the original source material can excitedly point and go, "Hey, I recognize that!" And there's just something fun and neat about that, okay? It's like it's paying homage to the original games that we all know and love, and that shows a lot of care and research went into this movie. Anyways, just for fun and because I do whatever the hell I want on my channel, I'm gonna rattle off a bunch of cool Easter eggs like I'm a fucking Watch Mojo list, just going over all the coolest details I've noticed after watching the film like 10 million times? Sorry if you think this is boring or whatever, but I don't care. I think all the Easter eggs are neat as hell and they give you something cool to look for as you're watching the film. It helps to engage the audience. Anyway, let's go! While not the exact same as the game universe, and of course changed to better fit a film adaptation, many of the story elements are drawn directly from the games. Likewise, many sets are designed with props that directly mimic the in-game locations, like the office, the stage, there being walls of children's drawings, etc. Foxy sings a Diddly Dum Dum song, which is a reference to him singing in the games. If you didn't know, the voice actor singing this song in the movie is our beloved Kellen Goff, known for voicing other FNAF characters like Funtime Freddy, Molten Freddy, Glamrock Freddy, the daycare attendant, etc. Many of the props in Afton's workshop are taken from old Jim Henson movies. The opening title sequence is in a pixel art style, mimicking how in the games there are several minigames with a similar pixely art style. Afton is purple in this scene. Infamously in the games, he was represented with a purple sprite, leading to the nickname Purple Guy, back when we didn't have an official name for the guy. Throughout the film, Mike wakes up at 6 a.m., the same time in each FNAF game that the night ends. Dream theory being written on the book and being a central plot point. We discussed this briefly earlier, but it was a controversial fan theory. Chica's Rainbow, a character from FNAF World, is part of this ice cream shop's logo. William has a rabbit foot on his desk, foreshadowing his role as the Yellow Rabbit. In the classroom, there are spelling words written on the blackboard, with the most significant words being puppet, bear, bunny, and chick. Mike has a phone call with William Afton, and the way that Afton speaks is eerily similar to how the guy on the phone in FNAF 1 speaks, introducing Mike to the place and even saying some of the exact same phrases, such as, "catch you on the flip side." The Freddy Fazbear's sign has the same colors and style as the Showbiz Pizza logo. Similarly, the outfit that the girl in the training tape wears reminds me of the uniforms worn in old Showbiz Pizza commercials that I've definitely watched a normal amount of times. On that security training tape, Fritz's name is scratched out. The endoskeleton, in this film nicknamed Tina by the film crew, makes appearances periodically throughout the movie but hidden in the background. I'll be honest, even though I've seen this movie literally dozens of times, I'm really bad at spotting her. Balloon Boy tends to pop up throughout the film, being very annoying as he's known for being in the games. Many of the props in the prize corner are real FNAF merch that exists, like the shitty plastic Halloween masks, Hex plushies, even the security badges being Sanchi products. The button to start the show is labeled Showtime, just like the button in Help Wanted. There was originally going to be a Showtime performance in that game, but it was never implemented fully. Mike's living room is set up extremely similarly to his room and sister location. Sparky the dog is a famous early hoax image created by a fan back in the FNAF 1 days. He now has a little diner and a small cameo inside of this film. Matt Pat, guy famous for his FNAF theories and for popularizing FNAF theories on YouTube, makes a cameo. Y'all know I'm a Matt Pat hater, but even I have to admit this is a little bit funny. They have him say his catchphrase from his videos, and his name tag is bullying him for his silly Sans' nest theory. In some of the scenes with the ghost children, their faces become distorted in the background. "It's me" appears on the mirror when Foxy attacks. This phrase is famous for constantly appearing in FNAF 1, being associated with the ghost children. When Foxy leaves his cove, "It's me" appears on the sign in front of Pirate's Cove. Carl's shirt has a screenshot of Midnight Motorist, a minigame in FNAF 6. Chica passes by in the background here if you look closely at the fan in the background, making her way into the kitchen. The guy named Carl gets killed by the cupcake. I don't know if this is an intentional nod to the fans, but Carl was a fan nickname for the cupcake back in the day. For the record, his official name is Mr. Cupcake. The animatronics kill in areas that are associated with each one, respectively. Chica kills someone in the kitchen, Bonnie kills someone in the closet, Foxy kills someone in the hallway. Freddy is the only exception here, but I think that's a difficult case since he isn't really associated with any main areas in the games, aside from the main stage, which he doesn't really leave until later in the night or on more difficult modes. The Ghost Boy says, "Follow me," which is a phrase that's used in FNAF 3 minigames. Sparky, Shadow Freddy, Torture Freddy, which is a new character from the movie who's the body belonging to the head installed in the torture device, and the endoskeleton are all sitting in the animatronic workshop. Freddy bites someone. Bites are kinda famous in FNAF. There's the famous bite of 87 mentioned in FNAF 1 phone calls, though it really isn't all that plot relevant in the grand scheme of things, and the more plot relevant bite of 83. The giant spring-lock animatronic in the storage room is Ella, a character originally from the FNAF Silver Eyes books, but has since made an appearance in Fazbear Frights and also in Security Breach on the arcade machines. The Employee of the Month board in the hallway has images of various FNAF YouTubers. This taxi driver is also a YouTuber, I think. I don't actually know who this guy is, and I've never watched his stuff, but I'm pretty sure he's a YouTuber based on how people talk about this scene. Also, only a YouTuber screams like this.
Oh my goodness!
Golden Freddy seemingly teleports, a reference to his ghostly apparitions and behavior in the games. When Mike is emerging from the vent in this scene, Bonnie actually spots him. You can tell by the way he looks directly over and begins very janky, unnatural body movements. He's moving his arms in an attempt to direct Freddy's attention over there. When Foxy stalks Abby through these arcade machines, it's very similar to a scene in the Silver Eyes where Foxy is stalking Charlie through arcade machines. William says, "I always come back," as he puts on the yellow rabbit mask as he gets spring-locked. This phrase is infamous in the games, being associated with William, as he really does always make a return in some form or another. He even says it multiple times. Movie William knows how the robot possession works, so as he's dying in the suit, he's essentially proclaiming that he will return possessing the suit. Another Silver Eyes reference is the way the animatronics drag William away. I'm not sure if this is meant to be a direct reference or not, but the way that William writhes around on the floor in pain here is very reminiscent of the FNAF 3 trailer. The credit song is FNAF 1 song by The Living Tombstone. This song is famous for being the first ever and most popular FNAF fan song there is, with over 351 million views as of writing the script. This version in the movie has some really cool new backing vocals if you listen closely. After the Living Tombstone song finishes, a rendition of My Grandfather's Clock plays. This is the same song that is used in FNAF 2 as the music box tune that soothes the puppet and keeps it asleep. At the very end of the song, a robotic voice starts spelling out letters out loud. COMEFINDME, which spells out "Come Find Me." This is exactly the same voice that's used in the FNAF 2 minigames, which spells out various hidden messages for the players such as "Save Them." Wow, that's an impressive amount of references! And I wouldn't be surprised if I missed some. That's by all means not a comprehensive list. I appreciate how some are obvious, but some are subtle things that only die-hard fans will notice. Overall, it's very cool that they included that many Easter eggs inside the film, as again, it's a lovely treat for us fans that shows a lot of attention to detail and care, but it also makes watching the film more engaging for if you want to keep an eye out for those references. So, yeah, a lot of people fucking hate this movie. Which is fine, opinions be opinions and all, but I truly do think it's a fantastic film that doesn't really have that many issues.
Urgh, this film is infuriating.
I thought you'd say that. You got anything you want to contribute, Bugged?
Where do I start? This is a horror movie that isn't scary. There are hardly any scenes that could be considered remotely scary, and even then, it never reaches that truly horrifying level that I crave in horror films. Where's the gore and the tension?
I think it's scary. There are scenes with gore and people dying. Mike narrowly avoids getting his face ripped to pieces by buzzsaws and then backs himself up into a pile of bloody corpses. I enjoy the horror of it all.
I do agree with Kat in that I think this movie should be considered a horror movie because it does have scary scenes. I think the haunted animatronics, ghostly possession story, and the horror of what happened because of William are solid and they all contribute to that. Something doesn't have to have a ton of gore to be scary. Sometimes fear can stem from scary concepts, ideas, and impressions made by the story. I think the FNAF movie does have a lot of scary ideas in it, even if it doesn't have as much gore. I will say this. I am a fully grown-ass adult who is able to watch this in the theater without really feeling all that scared. None of the scenes are bad enough to make you legit have nightmares or anything, like some FNAF games have the power to do. Like, the first time I played Help Wanted, I couldn't sleep for weeks. But, to be honest, I don't mind the movie not being the scariest. It's completely fine. Maybe I'm just a pussy bitch crybaby who can't actually handle scary horror that well, but I appreciate that I was able to sit through a legit horror film for the first time in my life. I don't see a lot of movies. Sure, maybe it's not the scariest horror movie ever, but does that really have an impact on its quality as a good film at all? I don't think so. The film chooses to focus more on engaging story and characters that the audience can connect to, which is important for new audiences to be invested in the story at all. I've seen people complain, they should have just dived right into the horror without wasting time with any of those not very important character scenes and catering to general audiences. But it is important to make a film palatable to everyone, both new viewers and old fans. You have to give anyone a reason to care about your characters or story at all, and as a result, it's a pretty solid film. I don't care that they focused more so on making a good story than just scary moments with no substance. That's a good thing in my personal opinion. Could it have been improved with more scary? Sure, maybe. But does it stand fine on its own? Also yes. There's enough other good stuff there to make it a satisfying film, even if it's not a scary film. On that note, I've literally heard so many conflicting opinions on how the movie presents itself to you. That was a pretty solid example of people arguing that the film tried too hard to appeal to general audiences. But I've also seen people complain that the film pandered too much to fans, with there being too many references that would go over a general audience member's head. What on earth do you people want? Make up your minds! My personal opinion is that the film hits a good balance of being friendly to newcomers and respectful of the fans. Regardless of what people argue, I think both are very important. With any adaptation, you shouldn't alienate anyone new to the franchise, but you also need to be mindful of what the fans like about it. Some people say, fuck the fans, just do what makes a good movie, and I get it. But fans are the ones who are most emotionally invested in whatever project it is, and they will likely be the only ones talking about an adaptation years and years afterwards, unless it's a truly phenomenal adaptation. Example? The live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender adaptation. No, not the new one, the old one. God, it's bad that I have to specify that. Now, I haven't really watched the original show other than having it on in the background in my boyfriend's house, and I only saw these movies once as a baby, so I don't know shit about Avatar at all. But I do know that they didn't really take any care to respectfully adapt the cartoon into live action movies, ignoring important aspects about the original. At least, that's what I've heard from fans. Do you see anyone talking about that movie nowadays other than upset fans complaining about how shit it was? That's why it is somewhat important to keep what fans like about the original thing in mind. Anyways, I think that the FNAF movie excels at being a good film for anyone who may be watching. Like I said before, I've seen this movie with both die-hard FNAF fans and clueless parents who didn't know shit about FNAF, and I think everyone was able to understand what was happening and enjoy the film. They introduce all the characters thoroughly, and they do a good job of showing off the haunted story of the pizzeria. They plant the seeds about the children going missing, and are able to establish that the ghost children are possessing the robot through Mike's investigation and Vanessa's explanations. Those are the most major plot points, and they are explained fairly clearly. Sure, there might be some things that go over new viewers' heads. I could see a newcomer being confused about why Golden Freddy is so weird and ghostly. Heck, they don't even call him Golden Freddy or give him a name at all. They just mentioned that he's not Freddy. But you could still piece it together. It's just a vengeful, ghostly child spirit. Not everyone is going to understand all the minuscule references, like the names of Ella, Fetch, and all the other animatronic pieces laying in the back room, but they don't need to get every single reference ever in order to enjoy the film. There's enough nods to the fans and incredible respect to the game's accuracy to make the fans happy, which was their main focus, and I agree that it should have been the main focus, but it isn't alienating to new viewers at all. And speaking of game accuracy, I think it's ridiculous how some fans are arguing that it wasn't accurate enough. I'm gonna scream. This film bent over backwards to ensure that all of the designs of the robots, sets, and everything looked like it could have come straight out of the games, with a story that takes many plot elements from the games and references galore. What do you mean it's not accurate enough? What, would you have preferred a film that was just Mike sitting in a room checking the doors, cameras, rinse and repeat for over an hour? Of course they're going to change the story a little bit, because that's what a good film adaptation does. Films and video games, they're both great, but they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Playing game footage for an hour doesn't necessarily make a good film, as games have an added interactive element that is more focused on, and they could be longer than a film. Films are more focused on visual storytelling and are limited to a 1 to 2 hour time period, therefore needing to condense some elements of the story. So it was a good choice to make the film a separate universe for the game, so it didn't have to be exactly 100% the same. And they would be able to make narrative changes that enhanced the story in the new film format. Plus, it would just be fucking boring to watch actual FNAF 1 on a movie screen for an hour. I know they made minor changes to things like, making the robot's eyes glow, changing the way that spring locks look. Because obviously in a movie format with pure film, the spring locks we have in the games aren't really visually striking, and the damage they cause might not be very clear without Vanessa opening her mouth to over-explain it. So they changed it to be more visually obvious as to what's happening for the film format. But I feel like those types of changes are so minor. I both understand completely why the filmmakers made those changes, and I also can't imagine complaining or fussing too much over it.
You know what else I didn't like about this movie? It was so cheesy.
Cheesy? It's FNAF! This is the Haunted Chuck E. Cheese series. It has always been a little cheesy. But also, I get where you're coming from, actually. Back in 2021, before the FNAF movie came out, there was a movie called Willy's Wonderland. And by all accounts, it was literally just a FNAF ripoff. Literally, they had legal action taken against them, and they had to change the original script, where they had a rabbit villain burn everything down, on top of changing the fact that there was a bear, a pirate, a bird girl in the original animatronic cast. But it is, honest to God, just a ripoff about Nicolas Cage visiting an old place with animatronics that are haunted since children were murdered there. Now, maybe one day I'll fucking torture myself and make an entire video about that film because, oh boy, it's a big topic. But one thing I know is that when it came out, everyone was talking about how cheesy and silly it is. Which, I get it, they clearly didn't want to take their story very seriously, and they went for more of a comedic route, that's fine. But it also made people like me worry that it would ruin FNAF's ideas for taking a story like that seriously. Because FNAF, while it does have silly moments and is a little bit cheesy, it's also very serious, good at its horror, and it treats its story with care. I remember being worried before the FNAF movie came out that it would lean too much into the cheesiness. I remember seeing Tumblr posts of people going, "I'd be okay with super cheesy, he's right behind me, isn't he?" dialogue in the FNAF movie, and just groaning to myself because I dreaded FNAF being overly cheesy to the point where people wouldn't take it seriously. Like how people didn't take fucking Willy's Wonderland seriously. A little cheese is okay, but not too much. But luckily, I think the FNAF movie found the right balance. Sure, there's some cheesy moments. I think I cringed inside a teensy bit the first time I watched and the ghost kid had the CGI black tears in his eyes effect. But other than that, I think that the slightly silly moments of like Hank screaming his head off and running around on the monitors like a Looney Tunes character, that fits. The original FNAF games do have some humor in them. But the movie is also mindful about which moments are comedic and have silly cheesy. Some randos we don't really care about dying? Okay, that's fine to be silly. But then they treat the actual serious plot lines of the horrible stuff that happened in the past here with care, and I respect that. And I'll be honest, I just flat out disagree with most of the other film criticisms. I've already discussed this when I was praising the film, so I won't tirelessly repeat myself any more than I already have, but I think the actors all did a great job conveying great characters, the story is intriguing and well written, and all of the artistic choices were phenomenal. The music, the sets, and especially those animatronics.
I do have to concede with you there. The sets and the animatronics are well built, with the accuracy to the original game being impressive. The first FNAF game is good, and the film's designs all capture the visuals well. What? Why are you looking at me like that?
I don't think I've ever seen you smile out of happiness or praise something that much. You're usually a big ol' negative Nancy.
Shut the hell up! You don't know how much I smile. You don't hear too much praise from me because you never review anything good.
At this precise moment that I am writing this section of the script, it is around 8:40 p.m., February 29th, 2024. Leap day. But by the time I finish writing the script and then edit and post this whole video, it'll be way later. I'm stating the exact date and time now so you have context for when I wrote this. I know eventually more FNAF Movie 2 news will come out later, but as of now, there's little revealed other than the fact that the FNAF 2 movie is confirmed and will reportedly start filming in July of this year, OMG. Definitely sooner than I expected, but I'm very excited and optimistic. I know that this really doesn't have anything to do with reviewing the first movie, but fuck it, I want to discuss my predictions for the next movie. Don't worry, I don't have many. We can assume that Mike is again going to be the main character, since it was indeed Josh Hutcherson who confirmed this new film. I think that most of the other main characters will return too, Abby and Vanessa, who I think will be fine in the grand scheme of things. She got stabbed, yeah, but the ending of the last film implied that she wouldn't die and will hopefully make a recovery. William might make an appearance again, he always comes back, but I'm not sure if they're gonna focus on him in this next movie or wait until a FNAF 3 film, since FNAF 3 is the game that originally introduced Springtrap and is very associated with him, but I'm sure he'll at least make an appearance. This is obvious, but I think FNAF 2 is gonna focus on, well, the FNAF 2 game location with the toy animatronics. Specifically, I think the puppet will be a major character. We've had several puppet hints, with the blackboard message, my grandfather's clock, and the message from the puppet inviting the audience to come find me. In the games, Charlie is the spirit inside of the puppet, and she was William's first victim. However, since the movies are in a different universe, I think it's likely that Garrett is going to be the spirit inside of the puppet. Kinda similar to Charlie, William drove up in his car to kill Garrett, but he was also killed away from the pizza place. I don't think he's gonna be inside of a normal animatronic, but the puppet is very special. With its significance and Garrett's significance in the movie plotline, I think it's a very real possibility. If I'm right, this should be the main focus of the plot. Discovering the FNAF 2 location and discovering Garrett's restless spirit inside of the puppet. I think we can expect to see the toys for sure. I would like to see the Wizards, but I worry about the plot getting too complicated and Jim Henson's company team being overworked if they have to make 10 separate characters. The Wizards are important to FNAF 2, but they're also just sort of shoved into the back rooms. The main focus is on the toys, and I think the movie should focus on them. Maybe they can modify the animatronics that were used in the first film to make withered versions for the second film? Though, if they do that, they may not end up looking as accurate to the FNAF 2 design, since the Wizards all actually have very different facial shapes to the FNAF 1 animatronics. I want Balloon Boy to be there, and I want Mike to stare at Balloon Boy and be upset that the little freak statue that annoyed and spooked him in the first movie has returned as an actual full-blown animatronic now. Hell.
I want Abby to die in the next film.
What?
I want a robot to rip her to bloody chunks and pieces.
Hey, yeah, that might add some more emotional stakes.
No, Abby doesn't need to die for there to be emotional stakes. Don't say that.
And the last real prediction I have is that no matter the film's actual quality, critics are going to rip it to pieces and gift it with the most unfavorable reviews you've ever seen the instant it releases.
The Five Nights at Freddy's film is rich with stuff to talk about. While it faced a very complicated history before its release and critics fucking hated it, it's actually a really wonderful movie. There are only really a few downsides you can nitpick at, but all of them are greatly outshined by the positives by a long shot. A compelling story with its main focus surrounding several sympathetic characters and an air of mystery residing inside this restaurant. It gives you good cause to get invested. The artistry that went into the puppets, robots, and costumes, and the incredible amount of attention to detail in the sets and references and the subtle hints hidden in the script. It's a fantastic movie! I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you're a FNAF fan, but I also believe non-FNAF fans could get something out of the experience too. What are y'all's thoughts? Have you seen the FNAF movie, and do you agree with me? Or do you think that the folks over there on Rotten Tomatoes who trashed so hard on this film were right with their criticisms? Also, what are y'all's thoughts and theories on a Freddy's 2 movie? I'd love to hear your opinions down below. Maybe I'll talk more about the sequel when it graces the big screen, but until then, I'll be sitting here rambling for an overly long amount of time about some silly video game topic. See y'all then!